The heat hung low over the town square like an old curse no one dared name. Dust curled off boots and horses, collecting on shirts, lashes, even the red-faced auctioneer swabbing his neck with a handkerchief that had long since lost its fight with the sun. I'd stopped for supplies, maybe a drink. I wasn't looking for anything but quiet. But then I heard her voice. "You'll never own what matters." It cut through the murmur like a gunshot. Clean, cold, unafraid. I turned. She stood on the platform like she'd built it herself, tall and dry-eyed, hands folded in front of a pale blue dress that didn't belong to this place. Or maybe it did once, long ago. Not a tear or smudge on it. Her chin held high like she was daring the whole square to blink first. Behind her, Rufus Garrett adjusted his hat and coughed into his fist like he could smother the tension with dust and throat clearing. He was a middling man, built like a fence post left out too long. Thin, splintered, unreliable. His smile faltered every time he looked at her, like he wasn't quite sure she was real. "She's healthy, speaks clean, no children, no debts. Opening bid starts at $50, he said, voice louder than necessary. Men chuckled. A few shuffled closer. One man leaned on the post beside me and muttered something about teaching her manners. I didn't laugh. She didn't look like she needed teaching. Her posture was too sharp, her hands too smooth, not the hands of a woman used to laundry or mending or labor. I saw no tremble in her fingers, no shrinking in her shoulders. What I saw was someone watching the crowd like she was memorizing threats, filing names away. Garrett fidgeted again, this time wiping sweat from his brow. I watched his eyes. He wouldn't look at her too long, wouldn't meet her gaze. That told me more than his words ever could. "You there," she said suddenly, and I realized she was looking straight at me. Not past me, not through me, at me. "Why are you standing back? Think watching makes you cleaner?" I blinked. I hadn't moved since the bidding started. I wasn't a buyer. I wasn't a bystander either, though I'd told myself otherwise. Her words landed like a slap, not because she was wrong, but because something inside me flinched in recognition. The crowd hooted. A few jeered. One man whistled low and called her a wildcat, but she never broke her stare. I pushed forward through the bodies, brushing aside a big man with a pork pie hat and the stink of old whiskey. Garrett looked up sharply. "Mr. Boone," he said, trying too hard to sound cheerful. "Didn't know you were in town." I didn't answer him. I walked up to the platform and looked at her up close. Her jaw was cut like marble, her eyes flint gray, lips thin but not tight. Her wrists were bound in front of her with loose cord, more for show than control. I took in the lines of her face, the calm behind her fire. There was no fear in her, just waiting. "What's your name?" I asked. "Ask him," she said, nodding at Garrett. "He bought it." The crowd laughed again, but it was a thinner sound this time. I stepped back, my pulse tapping behind my ears. Something was wrong here. The story didn't match the stage. Either she wasn't who they said, or they weren't ready for who she really was. And for the first time in a long while, I wanted to know the whole truth. 75, someone hollered from the back, his voice cracking like a boy wearing his father's boots. 80, came another, a man with a gold tooth and a preacher's collar, though the stink of his breath told a different story. The bids rolled in, each louder than the last, like men trying to shout down whatever it was she'd stirred up. Rufus Garrett pretended confidence, pounding the gavel with a bit too much enthusiasm, but sweat had soaked through his collar, and his hand shook when he took his tally notes. I didn't bid. Not yet. I stayed close, listening.
"She near killed a man," came a gravely voice beside me. An old-timer with a milky eye and a chewed-up hat spoke without looking at me. "What for?" I asked. "Wouldn't cook for him. That's what he told folks. But that's not the story I heard." I waited. "He told her to cook, slapped her when she said no. Next thing he knows, he's choking in his own blood, face buried in the stove ashes. Took 4 men to pull her off. Then he lied to keep from looking weak." I looked up at her again. She hadn't moved. I watched her fingers folded calmly until the wind caught her sleeve just enough to shift the fabric. There, a thin white scar circled her left wrist. Not a cooking burn, not even close. I'd seen restraints before, ropes, shackles, cuffs. This was old, healed well, but deep. A mark made by someone who didn't want her going anywhere. My gut twisted. She wasn't just some angry woman with a bad attitude. She was dangerous for a reason. And not the kind of danger that worried me. She was scanning the crowd now, not nervously, not desperate. Methodically, her eyes landed on each bidder for a beat. She wasn't sizing them up. She was counting weapons, reading intentions, calculating, like a soldier before the charge. "She's got war in her," the old man beside me said, almost reverently. Garrett cleared his throat. $90! Do I hear 95? One man whooped and waved his hat. Another elbowed through the line with a heavy coin purse. I leaned in closer to the platform, watching her eyes. I saw how they narrowed when they landed on a man with a pink scar under his eye. Her fingers twitched slightly, then went still. The scarred man smirked. "You know him?" I asked, loud enough for her to hear. She gave the faintest nod. "Friend?" I asked. "No," she said. "He's a memory." That chilled the laughter nearby. Men glanced at one another, unsure how to read the quiet menace in her voice. I saw it now. Not just fearlessness, purpose. Garrett noticed too. His hand hovered over the gavel. "Gentlemen, I'll remind you, this is a legal sale. All bids are binding." $100, someone shouted. More murmurs. A ripple of tension moved through the crowd. A man nearby whispered that she'd once been caught reading books in 3 languages. Another claimed she used to speak French to horses. I didn't know what was true, but I knew every story was more interesting than the last. And still she stood, bare wrists, bright eyes, back straight. I wasn't looking for a cause or a war. But sometimes a storm walks into town, and you can either hide or step into the rain with your eyes wide open. I stepped forward again. 110, I said. Heads turned. Garrett's eyes went wide. She looked down at me, and for the first time, her mouth curled at the corners. Not a smile, not exactly, but close.
The air changed when she moved. Not when she spoke, not when she glared. When she moved. She stepped to the edge of the platform like it was her pulpit, and the whole damn town leaned forward like parishioners in need of saving or cursing. Her hands were still bound, but her spine was steel. No hesitation, no apology. "My name is Cora," she said. "You can put whatever surname you like behind it, but I don't answer to any of them anymore." Dead quiet. Even the wind seemed to pause. "I was taught to read by a governess from New York. I learned French from a man who wore silk boots and lied for a living. I've managed accounts for properties with more acreage than this county. I've spoken to mayors, bankers, landowners. And now I'm being sold like a mule because one man thought he owned me. Her voice was clear and bitter and alive. Garrett took a half step forward. "That's enough," she said. "I'll speak," and he froze like a man who touched a rattler without meaning to. She turned to the crowd. "I didn't cook because I didn't belong there. I didn't belong in his kitchen or his bedroom or his dirty little story. I refused, and when he raised a hand to remind me who he thought I was, I reminded him I had hands too." Uneasy laughter, nervous, sharp. The man with the pink scar grinned wide, folding his arms. "She broke his ribs with a fireplace poker. That's the truth of it." "She broke his ribs," someone echoed. She didn't deny it. Instead, she looked back at me. "You ask why I didn't run? Because when I did, someone recognized me. Someone from before. And that's when the cage got smaller." A few murmurs now, more curious than mocking. "She's educated," a woman whispered. "What's she doing here? Who sold her? I heard she volunteered for the platform." She took a step back and addressed the whole square. "I refused to be hidden, and when I stopped hiding, they dragged me here, told me to smile and behave and be thankful they didn't hang me instead." Garrett coughed again, dry and fake. "That's colorful, ma'am, but not entirely accurate." "She's telling it better than you ever did, Garrett," someone called out. More laughter now. Nervous, yes, but shifting. Not lust, not mockery. Respect, or at least something close to it. Maybe fear, but it was earned. I couldn't look away. It wasn't the story or the poise or even the danger. It was the truth. She was laying it bare, stripping the entire farce of ownership and decency right there in front of the town that pretended it was anything better than a pen with fences. And the most dangerous part? She wasn't asking for freedom. She was demanding the right to be dangerous on her own terms. Garrett tried one last time to regain control. "Ladies and gentlemen, I remind you, this is illegal. She am not a sale. I am a reckoning." No one laughed now. I found myself stepping forward again, boots kicking up dirt. I didn't plan to. My body just moved. Cora saw it, and for a moment she didn't look like someone defending herself. She looked like someone daring the world to finally give her an equal fight. And hell if I didn't want to be standing on her side when it came.
"Who was he then?" someone yelled, a woman's voice this time. Younger. Not hostile, just curious, or maybe desperate to know if the story had a villain they could name. Cora didn't flinch. "My husband," she said plainly. "He bought me pearls, hired tutors, showed me off like fine furniture, until I told him I wanted my own name on the land deed." Silence again. "I wanted a partnership. He wanted possession. I told him no. He told me I was confused. When I insisted, he locked the doors, fired the staff, and told the neighbors I'd gone to visit my sick mother." "Where was this?" someone asked, softer now. "Denver," she replied. A man near the front turned pale. "God help me," he muttered. "That's where she's from. I remember the poster. Cora Maddox. Disappeared last spring. The whole town was talking about it." Head swiveled. The name spread like fire on dry grass. Cora Maddox. She didn't deny it. "I buried my husband in his rose garden, right next to the dog he shot when it tried to protect me." A gasp broke out. A woman crossed herself. A man near the back laughed, but it sounded more like nerves than humor. "Sterling Boone? That's me. I didn't move. Because I recognized something in her now. Something I'd seen once before. Years back, in a skirmish near the border, a young cavalryman with a bullet lodged in his spine had looked up at me with that same calm. The calm of a man who knew death had come and gone and decided to leave him behind anyway. The calm of someone who didn't care what the world thought anymore. Garrett stammered, his face pale now. Take, this sale's legal by paper. I didn't know who she was. I was paid. I didn't say you knew, she said coldly. I said you helped. The crowd was shifting now, uneasily. No more laughter, no more bravado. If she's Maddox's wife, the law might come down hard, someone whispered. Or Denver will send someone worse. They'll think she stole his fortune, run off. That was the moment I realized something dangerous. I didn't care. I didn't care if the law was coming. I didn't care if her story was perfect. I didn't care if she'd killed him with her bare hands or burned the estate to the ground. I looked at her, standing straight and unashamed in front of people who wanted to buy or bury her, and I thought, that's the bravest damn thing I've ever seen. And maybe I'd known that the moment she opened her mouth. I stepped forward again, boots crunching over gravel. Someone grabbed my arm. Garrett. Boone, think about what you're doing, he hissed. If Denver hears you were involved. I'm not involved, I said, brushing him off. Then stay back. I looked at Cora. You told the truth. She nodded once. No apology, no hope in her eyes either. Just truth. Well, I suppose it's time someone told the truth back. I turned toward the crowd. My name's Sterling Boone. I own land west of here. Plenty of it. And I'm bidding. Gasps, protests, murmurs ripping like wind through tall grass. 150, I said. Garrett's hand trembled on the gavel. Cora raised her chin again. Why? She asked, her voice low, barely audible. And I answered honestly. Because it looks like the whole damned world's lined up to break you. I stepped fully on the platform beside her. And I don't like bullies.
The crowd recoiled like I'd spat on holy ground. 200, I said next, loud and clear. You could have heard a gnat sneeze in the pause that followed. A few men cursed. One called me a fool. Another asked if I'd taken a blow to the head. I didn't answer. I just kept my eyes on her. Cora didn't blink, didn't smirk. She just looked at me like I'd walked into her test without knowing I was being tested, and maybe I had. Garrett cleared his throat and tried to salvage the rhythm. We've got $200 from Mr. Boone. Do I hear 210? The man with the pink scar sneered. 220. He stepped forward, closer than I liked. He looked at Cora with a possessive hunger that turned my stomach. She didn't flinch. She watched him the way a hawk watches a snake. Garrett was sweating through his jacket now. 220! Do I? 250, I said before the next breath. A wave of noise rippled. Gasps, chuckles, some outright swearing. Then came her voice. What makes you think I won't kill you too? It was quiet, meant only for me, but somehow everyone heard. The crowd hushed like a church before the sermon. I didn't look away. You might. Why risk it? Because I believe you. In what? In your reasons. That stopped her. Just for a beat. Her face didn't soften, her voice didn't waver, but something behind her eyes shifted, like a door creaked open, just wide enough to glimpse the fire inside.
You are either brave or stupid, she said. Both, I said, depending on who you ask. There were a few chuckles from the edge of the crowd, nervous ones. They didn't know if I was being honest or crazy. Truth was, neither did I. Garrett, sensing the moment slipping, tried again. 250 going once. Scarface stepped forward again. I'll. Cora turned her head toward him, slow and deliberate. Try it, she said. The man hesitated. His jaw worked, fists flexing, but he didn't speak. 250, Garrett said, grasping for control. Going twice. The gavel hovered. Then came a voice from the back, old, dry, steady. Let the girl choose. Every head turned. It was the old-timer with the milky eye, still seated on a barrel, chewing something brown and bitter, eyes sharp as hell despite the haze. She ain't livestock. If she's half what you all think she is, maybe let her decide. Murmurs again. Some nods, some frowns. Garrett looked panicked. That's not how this works. It is today, or you'll need a new crowd. And just like that, the wind shifted again. Garrett looked at me, at her, at the crowd. Miss, you got 2 offers. This man, he pointed at me, bids cash. The other, he nodded toward Scarface, makes no secret of what he intends, but it's still a bid. Cora looked from one to the other, then down at the knot of rope around her wrists. And she smiled. For real this time. Small, controlled, like a woman who just remembered she had the knife in her boot and everyone else had forgotten to check.
The crowd never saw her move. 1 second she was still, serene, tied and standing like a statue. The next, she wasn't. The rope slipped, or maybe she'd already loosened it and was waiting for the moment. All I know is that before Garrett dropped the gavel, the man with the scar lunged, and Cora was already in motion. She jumped from the platform like a hop dropping from a branch. His knife flashed, but hers was faster. She didn't even draw it. It appeared, somehow, like it had grown from her hand. The sound of metal meeting flesh is not what they tell you. It's dull, wet, final. Scarface screamed as she twisted his wrist, slammed her heel into his knee, and dropped him like dead weight. People screamed, scrambled, some ran. I didn't. I stood there watching her disarm a man twice her size like she'd been born for it, like she'd practiced on worse men in darker rooms. She kept one knee on his chest, blade under his jaw. Not a drop of blood spilled, yet. But he knew she wasn't bluffing. So did we all. You want to own something? Own your choices. Start with the one that got you here. The man whimpered, spit leaking down his chin. She stood slowly, tossed his knife aside, then kicked it to Garrett's feet. Still want to drop that gavel? Garrett didn't answer. His mouth opened and closed like a beached fish. He looked pale enough to faint. 250, I said again, louder now. Cora turned to face me. Blood on her hands, not her own. No fear in her eyes, just calculation. I said, sold, if that's what it takes. Her jaw flexed just slightly. Then she nodded once. Garrett, bless his useless bones, raised the gavel with a shaking hand and brought it down with the softest tap I'd ever heard. Sold, he croaked. The crowd began to murmur again, low, wary, like people speaking near a loaded gun. A few men backed away. A few stared like they wanted to ask more but didn't dare. I walked to the platform and handed Garrett the money, stacking bills slowly into his palm. He didn't count 'em. He didn't even meet my eyes. "Is it done?" I asked. He swallowed. "Far as I'm concerned." I turned to Cora. She wiped her hands on the hem of her dress, composed, unbothered. The man she'd dropped hadn't moved, maybe out cold, maybe pretending to be. "You all right?" I asked. "You still asking questions like you don't already know the answers." And then, for the first time, her shoulders dropped a fraction. Not weakness, just release. I offered my hand. She didn't take it, but she did walk beside me through the stunned crowd, head high, as if the platform behind her had never existed. And somehow, it didn't anymore. The town square was hushed like a funeral. No one shouted, no one chased. A few folks whispered, sure, but even that sounded scared. Like if they spoke too loud, she'd turn back and finish what she started. Cora walked beside me, her stride calm and deliberate. Every step said, "I chose this, not you, not them, me." We reached my horse, still tied near the mercantile. She didn't wait for instruction, just leaned against the post, arms folded, scanning rooftops like she expected bullets or knew how to dodge 'em. I turned back toward the square. Garrett was still frozen near the platform. A couple of men were helping the ones she'd put down. The rest were pretending to find somewhere else to be. I stepped up onto a crate near the well. Not much of a stage, but it was enough. "Listen here," I called out. Heads turned, doors creaked open. The wind finally picked back up. "She's not mine," I said. "Could have fooled us," someone muttered. I scanned the faces, mostly men, some women, a few wide-eyed kids tucked behind skirts. "I paid to stop what was happening, that's all. No ownership, no claim." "She killed a man," someone else said. "She survived one," I corrected. Silence. I continued. "She ain't property. She's got a mind sharper than most of us, hands faster than the law, and a will no price can tame. I didn't buy her, I hired her." Murmurs again, confused, angry. "For what?" a rancher asked, arms crossed. "Books," I said. "Payroll, land management, whatever she damn well chooses." That cracked the silence. "You giving a woman the books? You trusting her with wages? Hell, why don't you give her your gun and let her run the whole ranch?" "I might be better off." That shut 'em up. Behind me, I heard her laugh. Quiet, dry. The kind that says, "You're not wrong, but don't push your luck." "I might asking your blessing," I said, voice hardening. "I'm telling you how it is. I don't need her to serve me. I need her to outthink me." A woman near the front, gray-haired and stooped, nodded slowly. "About time," she muttered. That was all I needed. I turned back to Cora. "Offer stands, wages, autonomy, no conditions." She raised a brow. "Not even gratitude? You owe me nothing." She studied me, long enough that I wondered if I'd overstepped. Then she looked back at the square,
at all those faces still too stunned to process what they'd just seen. "I accept," she said finally. Just like that, the town changed shape. Not in buildings, not in roads, but in memory. Because they'd never forget the day a woman turned a platform into a pulpit and a sale into a reckoning. And I'd never forget that she let me walk beside her.
The square emptied slow, like folks were afraid turning their backs would invite something sharp between the ribs. Cora stood at my side, arms still crossed, watching the dust settle. Her dress was wrinkled now, stained with a bit of someone else's blood, him dragging through the street, but she looked more composed than any preacher I ever known. "You want to tell me why?" she asked finally, without looking at me. It was quiet, the kind of quiet that expects truth, not comfort. I thought about lying, saying something noble or clever, but I didn't. Because I've seen cages, Cora, built a few of them myself. Didn't like what it did to the men inside. Liked it even less when I realized I was building one around my own damn soul. She turned to me then. Her eyes weren't softened, just clearer, like a storm had passed, but the lightning was still close. "You think a job fixes that?" "No," I said. "I think choice does." That landed. She didn't nod, but something in her shoulders loosened. She said, "You should know, freedom doesn't come cheap. I'm not looking for cheap. I'm looking for real." She stared at me a long moment, then held out her hand. Not soft, not hesitant, just steady. I took it, and for a brief second, the whole world shrank down to the grip between us. A handshake, that's all it was. But it was the cleanest deal I'd made in a decade. "I'll need ink and ledgers," she said, releasing my hand, "and a room with a lock only I have the key to. Done. And I want a horse of my own, not just one to ride, one I choose." I smiled. "Hell, pick two." We saddled up not long after. She didn't wait for me to offer help, mounted up like she'd been riding her whole life. I took the slower pace, letting her lead, not because I was trying to prove anything, but because I knew she didn't need to. We left the town behind us, the roofs shrinking in the distance, the dust curling in our wake. I didn't know what tomorrow would look like. Didn't know what kind of fire Cora might bring to my ranch, my books, or my quiet life. But I knew this. Whatever came next, she'd chosen it. And that made all the difference. She didn't look back once. Neither did I.